Now we saying, yeah, though. Pull up stunt. Yeah, though. Yeah, though. Ice game flood. Yeah, though. Yeah, though. Every day I'm hustling. You know what it is, baby?
Y'all are now tuned into Talkin' Sports with Chris Mesa.
Hey y'all, this is Talking Sports with Chris Mesa. You're now watching episode 4, and thank you for coming back yet again for another week to sit around and listen to me ramble about sports. So thanks a lot. I appreciate y'all. I know everybody has a busy day, everybody's living their lives, but thank you for taking time to set aside, hit the play button, and give me a listen. If you've been liking what you've been hearing from everything that I've been given throughout these weeks, please, at the end of this video, be sure to hit the subscribe button here on YouTube. So again, thank you for watching, okay? As I'm filming this episode right now, today is actually Cinco de Mayo, so happy Cinco de Mayo to everybody out there. I hope y'all had a good time celebrating. Hope you celebrated. It's never a bad time for a good taco or some enchiladas. So I hope y'all ate good. Hope y'all had a good time celebrating. And also, while we're at it, Mother's Day is also this weekend. So as a son, to all the moms out there, all the good moms, happy Mother's Day. To my mom, special shout out also to my beautiful wife, Lexi, who does an awesome job with our 2 sons. Happy Mother's Day. One more shout out to my grandma. Love you, Grandma. Happy Mother's Day. Okay. So now that we all got all that, that mushy stuff out the way, let's go ahead and move on to this show. Okay. Today, we're going to talk about the NFL draft, kind of recap the NFL draft. Last week that draft took place, and man, it was a fun one. I really enjoyed it, and I hope y'all did too. Hope your teams improved, but hopefully not as much as my Dallas Cowboys improved, right? We're going to go to the Super Bowl this year, hopefully. All kidding aside, that was a joke. I wish we were, but probably not this year, okay? I can admit that. But we'll be back. We'll be back before you know it, okay? So, with the NFL draft, there was a couple of big moves that happened. A lot of college superstars ended in some good places, as far as where they landed and where they're going to play in the NFL. And there was a couple big blockbuster trades as well, too, I want to highlight right off the bat. You had A.J. Brown get traded to the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, of course, as a Cowboys fan, I hate that, but, as a sports fan in general, as a sports host of this show, I got to give props to the Eagles. What a good move. Now Jalen Hurts has Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown to throw that football to. Yeah, as a Cowboys fan, that scares me, okay? The next trade I want to talk about is Hollywood Brown was traded to the Arizona Cardinals. Former Heisman Trophy winner Kyler Murray now has A.J. Green and Hollywood Brown to throw that football to. Arizona was already a good football team. Boy, did they get better. Hollywood Brown, man, a former OU player himself. And, man, that's just going to continue to, spread the field for the Arizona Cardinals. So that's crazy, mind-blowing trade again. Boom, it was wild, so that's going to be fun to watch this year. Both of those trades are going to be really fun to watch and see what happens with those teams moving forward. Okay, now that we've got those blockbuster trades out the way, I got a couple of facts I want to drop on y'all. Not sure if y'all know these yet or not, but I want to make sure if you're watching my podcast that we're filling your brains with information and giving you some good knowledge. So to start that off, I've got the top states to produce the most NFL draft picks here in 2022, and this is according to Max Preps. Not sure if you know the top 10, but I'm going to go ahead and give it to you. So Texas came in at number 1 with 32 NFL draft picks. And real quick before I move forward, this is based on where the athletes went to high school and played their high school ball. So with that said, Texas is number 1 with 32 draft picks. The state of Georgia, boom, made some big movement. Georgia's been coming on hot on the scene as far as producing high school talent here in the past few years. Georgia comes in at 2 with 30 NFL draft picks this year. Next, you have California at 3 with 22 draft picks. Florida 21, Ohio at 13. Then you've got Alabama at 12. Then you've got Maryland with 10, Louisiana with 10, North Carolina with 10, and then Tennessee at number 10 with 9 draft picks. Okay, so that's how the top 10 states break down. Next, we're going to do the top colleges to produce NFL draft picks here in 2022. Georgia broke a record. The Georgia Bulldogs broke a record. They had 15 NFL draft picks this year alone from that one college, from that one football program. 15 whopping draft picks. Of course, they were the national champions, so congrats to Georgia on a memorable year here in 2022. What a year for those guys. Next at number 2 is LSU with 10. Then you've got Cincinnati at 3 with 9. That's amazing for Cincinnati. I'd like to point out that Cincinnati will be moving to the Big 12 here, maybe as soon as next year. So wow, what a milestone for that program. It's incredible for them to have 9 draft picks as they get ready to move into a Power 5 conference. So I imagine they can only grow on that momentum. So continue to watch out for Cincinnati as a college football program. Next is Penn State with 8 draft picks. Alabama comes in at 5 with 7. Oklahoma is at number 6 with 7. Baylor had 6 draft picks. Shout out to my Baylor Bears, as y'all all know. Sick 'em Bears with 6 draft picks this year. That's a program record as for Baylor. 6 is the most that they've ever sent in one draft pick. So shout out to my Baylor Bears. Ohio State also with 6. Ole Miss again with 6 draft picks. And then the last one is UCLA at number 10 with 6 draft picks as well. Ironically, it's interesting that it stops with UCLA, because after that the draft picks drop to 5 each team. Okay, so that's your top 10, and it kind of cleaned up nice and clean right there for you. Okay, so that's your top colleges to produce NFL draft picks this year. Okay, so I just wanted to drop some facts on you. Okay, so hopefully if you didn't know that, there's something new. If your college is in there, shout out to your college. They had a good football here this year because they had a lot of talent this year. Okay, let's move on. We're going to move on to the next section. And before I actually dive into like the meat of my show, it's been, the rumors have swirled, and it's not rumors, it's facts. How about them Texas Longhorns? They ended the NFL draft this year, the 2022 NFL draft, with 0 draft picks through 7 rounds. The Texas Longhorns don't do that often, but man, this program has been, this program's been mediocre. Hate to be so harsh to the guys, south of us on I-35 there in Austin. But man, the Texas Longhorn program has been mediocre since Mac Brown took them to the national championships a couple times in the early 2000s. Man, they fell off, and they've kind of fallen off hard. And man, the carousel ride's been crazy. They've had a lot of ups and downs with that program. They hit another big time low with 0 draft picks in the NFL draft. There were 45 different schools in programs that had at least 1 draft pick. Some of those schools were the Kansas Jayhawks. Okay, it's a basketball school. Okay, the UT Chattanooga, Youngstown State, Villanova, Samford, Fordham, Valdosta State, and Yale. Okay, Yale had a draft pick, so they have higher GPA scores and higher SAT scores, and they have more NFL draft picks this year than the Texas Longhorns. Okay, so what a crazy year, right? A lot of people, are really bagging on these Texas Longhorns, but why? Why did they have 0 draft picks? There's actually an explanation. I'm going to dive into that and talk about that a little bit. Okay. So first things first, the Texas Longhorns only had 2 players invited to the NFL Combine to try out in front of all the front office people and NFL scouts, okay? 2, that's not a lot for a football team, okay? So anybody else that wasn't invited and only, tried out at the pro day that the University of Texas was hosting, it was a long shot for anybody else besides those 2, okay? So the 2 that tried out were Josh Thompson, he's a defensive back, and Cameron Dicker, the kicker. Dicker the kicker. So them 2 got to try out at the NFL Combine, and everybody else, kind of gave it a shot at the pro day. The biggest surprise is that Cameron Dicker wasn't picked up, okay? Cameron Dicker is from Lake Travis. He was a 3-star kicker in the 2018 class. For his career at the University of Texas, he kicked 206 extra points successfully out of 210 extra point tries, okay? And then he was 60 of 79 on field goals made in his career, okay? In his 2021 season, he was 13 of 15, so he had a strong 2021 season. And, in his overall career, he was pretty solid. He was relied upon as a young kicker, and and he got a little better even as a senior. Cade York, he's the most notable kicker from LSU taken in the NFL draft. Sure, he produced a little bit better than Cameron Dicker, but Cameron Dicker was no slouch, and so it was a little surprising that he wasn't taken. But overall, a lot of kickers aren't always taken. So you send 2 prospects to the NFL Combine, and one of them is a kicker. That tells a whole lot of the story, okay? But Josh Thompson, he was the next guy that went to the NFL Combine. So what was up with Josh Thompson, right? Okay, he's from Nacogdoches, Texas. He's a 4-star cornerback that was taken in the 2017 class, and that's where he was recruited. In 2021, he played 9 games. He had 23 tackles and 1 interception. That's not, jumping off the charts to anybody in the NFL, okay? He missed the remainder of the season with a fractured fibula, okay? Josh Thompson, he's a big corner, but his best attribute was probably as a tackler, but, he was not quite good enough to take on a primary safety role in anybody's depth chart. So as a corner, that's his best thing to do is tackle, and not cover. You're thinking about moving him to safety, but his tackling skills was not up to par. So moving on to some of the guys that tried out in the pro day, Derek Kerstetter, he was a starter on the offensive line from San Antonio, a 3-star recruit from the 2017 class. He was second team All Big 12. Cade Brewer, he was a starting tight end, a 3-star tight end from Lake Travis as well. He had 22 receptions for 184 yards and 3 touchdowns in 10 games. Again, not jumping off the charts to anybody in the NFL. He actually started. He's a slow tight end. His 4.8 40 time at Pro Day, again, is not wowing anybody. So Cade Brewer, that's kind of why he got left out of the mix as well. The next guys that were eligible, overall you had 12 guys eligible for the NFL draft from the Texas Longhorns football team, okay? Brendan Schooler, he started at times. He transferred in to Texas from Oregon as a wide receiver, and then he ended up moving to DB when he got here to Texas. He had 50 tackles as a safety. He played well. A lot of scouts would admit that he played well, but there was not a whole lot of potential or upside for the next level of him playing in the NFL. So that's why he got left out of the mix as well. Moving on, you got Jacoby Jones, defensive lineman that moved to linebacker. He moved to linebacker, and he had 20 tackles last season. Again, he didn't even bust into the starting role as a backup player, a rotating player. He had 20 tackles last season. Next is Ben Davis. He transferred in from Alabama, and he couldn't find a spot on the field for the Texas Longhorns either. 16 tackles. Yeah, that's not going to wow anybody. Justin Mater, a long snapper. Gabe Watson, he was a running back. one word or one name there, Bijan. Bijan Robinson, he's a 5-star running back for the Texas Longhorns. And any chance you get, you want to put the ball in his hands. That kid is special. So Gabe Watson, as his last year there, he had 10 attempts and 37 yards. Okay. Next is Denzel Okafor. He was on the offensive line. He cracked the starting lineup this year as a super senior. He had 19 starts in his career, but he ended his last season early in the year with a season-ending leg injury. Okay. Next, you have Ray Thornton, LSU transfer. This guy, he played linebacker. He missed nearly a dozen tackles according to Longhorn boards. He only made 31 tackles all last season. He nearly missed as many tackles as he made and as a grad senior transfer. Okay. So Thornton had he just had a hard time adjusting to the college level. NFL scouts saw that, and of course, if he's having a hard time on the college level, probably going to have even a tougher time on the NFL level. Okay, and last but not least, you have Darian Dunn. He transferred in from McNeese State. He had 1 start and 22 total tackles. So that's the 12 prospects for the NFL and for the Texas Longhorns. And man, I mean, your guess is as good as ours. Yeah, I mean, it's not a guess; it's a fact. These guys, they didn't have a big, awesome, talented class going to the NFL this year. So that's why the Texas Longhorns ended this season in the NFL draft with 0 draft picks. Womp, womp, womp. But, you don't want to give them too hard of a time. They come back with a talented team. These guys were, rotating players, most of them. And so that means that the Longhorns are returning a lot of players, with another year of growth. The Longhorns actually probably do improve this year. I know people always joke about them, Sam Ehlinger, the famous "we're back," so, yeah, they get clowned on, and that happened, 5 years ago, and they're definitely not back, and they won't be back this next year. But, they definitely improve. They probably go to a bowl game, okay? So that is why the Texas Longhorns had 0 draft picks. Okay, so let's move on with the show. I wanted to backtrack a little bit here, okay? Now that the NFL draft has happened and over the last couple weeks, real quick, I'm sorry. Over the last couple weeks and since the beginning of this show, of course, besides my draft, NFL draft show, I did the AFC West and I did the AFC North early predictions. That's kind of been the headlines of my shows, okay? And so before we move on to the next NFL divisions, now that the NFL draft has happened, let's for real wrap up the AFC West and AFC North, okay? So we're going to talk a little bit about their draft picks. Did it improve their teams? And did it change my predictions, okay? Maybe it did, okay? So listen up. Let's see what we've got, okay? So we're going to start with the AFC West. So first team up, I'm going to start with the Kansas City Chiefs. I had the Chiefs in the NFL draft going edge and wide receiver with their first 2 picks. Their first pick, they traded up to take cornerback Trent McDuffie, okay? Just first things first, I just wanted to acknowledge that when they took Trent McDuffie, Kyer Elam and Roger McCreary were both there, I believe. Kyer Elam from Florida, Roger McCreary from Auburn. And I think both of those corners could potentially be better than Trent McDuffie. But at the same time, the Chiefs analyzed them. Experts analyzed them. Experts had McDuffie graded really high. A lot of them had him graded higher than Kyer Elam and Roger McCreary, okay? The reason I wanted to highlight that pick is because my Cowboys, were in front of the Chiefs, and the Chiefs traded up just right in front of the Cowboys. And I have no clue why they did that because my Dallas Cowboys were in no way, shape, or form trying to take a cornerback, okay? So I don't know why they made that move. It was a little strange. Surely there was something in the background and all the chit chat that was going on that made them do that. But overall, besides that weird move, I mean, it was a good draft pick for them. He's one of the highest rated corners here in this NFL draft, and so good luck to Trent McDuffie there at the Kansas City Chiefs. The next pick, they did go edge with their next pick, as I predicted in the first round. They did take George Karlaftis from Purdue. This is a great pickup. This is a great pickup of value to the Kansas City Chiefs, okay? I also want to highlight that with their next pick in the second round, the Chiefs went with Sky Moore. I think they should have found a bigger receiver than Sky Moore, but Sky Moore nonetheless he's a highly talented receiver coming into the NFL. But what's also clear here is that they're trying to replace Tyreek Hill with Sky Moore. He's definitely a smaller, shiftier wide receiver, quick off the block here. Kid's really quick, got good hands. And so, it's clear that's what they're probably trying to do here. That's not going to happen. There's no way that Sky Moore is Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill is one of the greatest of this generation, of this decade at least. You know what I mean? So I don't think Sky Moore is going to replace that. But he can definitely step in. He can help. He's a talented receiver. Clearly, he'll probably be a slot receiver. And, a lot of times that's where Tyreek Hill was. And so Sky Moore steps right in and helps out there. Okay, so moving on, the Kansas City Chiefs, the next thing that they did was that they drafted 3 corners and 2 safeties, okay? You think these guys want to tighten up on their secondary? Yeah, it seems that way. Okay, so that's what they did. Hopefully there's a couple guys in this draft, that they can plug in and begin to rotate into their secondary, right? Okay, so let's move on to the next team. I have the Los Angeles Chargers. I had the Chargers going O-line and wide receiver with their first 2 picks. Their first pick, they did go offensive line, and they went with Zion Johnson from Boston College. I didn't think that Zion Johnson would actually be available for them at pick 17. So, kudos to the Los Angeles Chargers. They needed offensive line, and kudos to them for taking Zion Johnson because he's highly touted coming out here and going into the NFL. So that was a good pickup for them. The next pick that they did in the second round was J.T. Woods, safety from Baylor. Sick'em Bears. He was picked up in the second round by the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers defense is really good, okay? One of the best in the NFL, actually. So with J.T. Woods, it's most important to note that J.T. Woods is just a good football player, okay? J.T. Woods is a great safety, but first things first, he's a good football player. He's capable of playing all over in the secondary for the Chargers, and he jumps the pass well, and this guy's going to get you turnovers, okay? I think he had 5 or 6 interceptions on the year just this year at Baylor, okay? So when he sees that football and has an opportunity, he usually makes the most of it, okay? Moving on to the next pick. The next pick that the Chargers made that I liked and want to point out was running back Isaiah Spiller from A&M. Got to watch that kid a little bit, of course, being here in Texas. Of course, watching those Aggies over there, just down the Brazos from Baylor. But I want to point out that I do like this pick for the Chargers. Isaiah Spiller can, potentially come in right away and complement Austin Eckler. And just want to point out that Isaiah Spiller was a 1,000-yard rusher, and the dude can catch the ball out of the backfield, okay? So I think Justin Herbert's going to like that as well. So good pickup for the Chargers. I want to note that the Chargers, just looking over their draft picks, looking at what they needed, the Chargers had a really great draft. A round of applause there for the front office, and the coaching staff. They know their team, of course they do. But, I feel like they did a great job of maneuvering in this draft and getting exactly what they needed to improve this football team, the Los Angeles Chargers, in this tough AFC West. Okay, moving on to the next team. Next, I have the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders didn't have first or second round draft picks. They gave those up when they picked up Davante Adams. Who's gonna blame the Raiders for giving up those picks for Davante Adams, right? If you don't know who Davante Adams, if you don't know who he is, watch the Las Vegas Raiders next year, okay? you'll find out real quick who Davante Adams is. He came in from the Green Bay Packers, had over 1,500 yards receiving just last year with the Green Bay Packers. This guy is off the charts talented. So the Raiders gave up their first and second round picks. They're gone, but they do have Davante Adams now. So let's highlight what I think they needed. I think they needed O-line and D-line. They did go O-line in round 3 with Dylan Parham from Memphis, a good pickup for them in that round. Okay. Next, they picked up Zamir White from Georgia, a running back. Okay. Georgia had a very talented backfield. Zamir White had to split the ball 3 or 4 ways with running backs down there. 5-star running backs all over that backfield, and Zamir White was one of them. Splitting the carries that much, Zamir White still ended up with like 800, 900 yards rushing. So this guy's no slouch. But the Las Vegas Raiders added Zamir White to the backfield. This was an insurance move in my mind and a competition move. Josh Jacobs is the number 1 back there in Las Vegas, and then Kenyon Drake is his backup currently. But Kenyon Drake is coming back off of injury. Not sure how that's going to pan out. So, of course, they added Zamir White. Again, great move, great insurance move, just in case Kenyon Drake is not ready to go. Okay, let's move on to the next pick. Next, they went defensive tackle with Neil Farrell from LSU. Big fella's there to stuff the run, okay? This guy's huge. He's about 320 pounds. Big boy's tipping that scale, baby. And last year for LSU, he had 45 tackles for LSU last year. And the guy's there to, he's there to clog holes, okay? He's there to cause problems. Neil Farrell, he's a big old boy. He's going to be able to do that for the Las Vegas Raiders, okay? So, man, just overall, the Raiders, again, I like what they did in the NFL draft, and I think they did a good job of making their team better overall, adding quality pieces to their roster. Okay, let's move on to the next team. Let's see, last but not least for the AFC West, shout out to my people there in the Rocky Mountains. We got your Rocky Mountain boys coming up, okay? We got your Denver Broncos. I had the Denver Broncos going tight end and linebacker with their first couple of picks in my mock draft last week. With their first pick, they did end up picking Nick Bonito, edge rusher from Oklahoma. Regardless of what I thought, I still love this pickup for the Denver Broncos, and I think it was a strong pickup. What you'll be able to do is rotate him with Randy Gregory. The Broncos also picked up Randy Gregory this offseason from my Dallas Cowboys. What happened there was what you would call contractual conflicts took place. Okay, so now Randy Gregory is there with the Denver Broncos, and he just had a breakout season with the Dallas Cowboys, and man, the Broncos surprised everybody by picking him up. He's really going to help their defense, and Nick Bonito is now going to be able to rotate in and most likely continue to help that defense. The Broncos will be applying pressure all season long now, picking up Nick Bonito. Round 3, that's where they went ahead and picked up that tight end. They picked up Greg Dulcich from UCLA. He's a good tight end. He's going to help out in the passing game. He'll probably actually improve his game and his stats, being able to play next to Russell Wilson now, okay? So Greg Dulcich, he goes in there. He adds another passing threat where they have Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton. This wide receiver core and this passing game is incredible in Denver, okay? So let's move on to the next pick that caught my attention with the Denver Broncos. Next, they went corner with Damari Mathis from Pitt. This is also another good pickup here. Damari Mathis had 43 tackles and 2 picks for Pitt last year. And then that's kind of all I have for the Denver Broncos. Sorry so short, y'all, but I'm just still really concerned about their O-line. Really big time concerned about their O-line. Do I feel like that changes my early predictions? Man, I'm having a tough time with that. This AFC West is tough. No doubt that they pick up, that they picked up Russell Wilson, so, But what I'm going to do is I'm going to be conservative and say no at this time. I'm going to give a lot of credit to Russell Wilson here, and I'm going to say that upgrade at quarterback keeps them in third, okay? So this division is tough, and what did my way too early predictions look like? Number 1, the Las Vegas Raiders. Number 2, the Kansas City Chiefs. Number 3, the Denver Broncos. And number 4, the Los Angeles Chargers. In no way will I be surprised if the Chargers bump up. I mean, all these teams are incredible. Honestly, the Chargers have a really stacked team, and if Justin Herbert shows up and the Chargers are able to protect him, I could see them making major moves. This division is close from top to bottom. So, but either way, that's how I have it right now. Okay. So as we're continuing our backtrack, let's move on to the next division, the last division that I've covered up to this point in the podcast as I'm covering these NFL divisions. And the next one that I had covered was the AFC North, okay? So let's kick the AFC North off with the Cleveland Browns. Shout out to them Cleveland Browns and signing Deshaun Watson this offseason. Let's talk about their draft picks, okay? First things first, they picked up David Bell, wide receiver from Purdue, who's 6'2", 205 pounds. He had 1,286 yards and 6 touchdowns, 13.8 yards per reception. The only thing about this guy is he had a 4.65 40 time. For receiver, that's slow. The guy has good hands. I watched his tape. The guy is patient with his route running. He does a good job of course, finding the hole in the zone and finding ways to get open. He also does a good job of being patient and letting the defense clear out before he continues his route. It's actually quite impressive. So if he's able to continue to do that in the NFL, this guy could do pretty well. So they picked up David Bell. Let's see how he does. That'll be interesting. Okay, so the next pick that I want to highlight is Perion Winfrey, defensive tackle from Oklahoma. Big boy did well at the Senior Bowl. The Browns really needed some help on the defensive front. I had the Browns taking an edge player with their first pick in the 3rd round and a defensive lineman with their second 3rd round pick. Okay, so Perion, he comes with great value in the 4th. They picked him up in the 4th round, and they probably took best available edge player with Alex Wright in the 3rd round. I really like the Perion Winfrey pick. I think they got him at great value there in the 4th round. They needed a defensive lineman. He comes in from college to the NFL, coming in with a lot of momentum and a lot of steam. I think he's going to be a great add to the roster for the Cleveland Browns, okay? So let's move on to the next pick. The Cleveland Browns actually drafted a kicker, but this kicker really is special. The kicker from LSU, Cade York. Let's keep this short and sweet. Cade York could be the next Justin Tucker, okay? And as we were sitting here recording, I actually just thought of something, okay? So hear me out. Does anybody remember that song that Jay-Z and Alicia Keys did? It goes, let's hear it for New York. Yeah, does anybody remember that song? Yeah, okay. I know I'm not a singer, okay, so cut me some slack. But if you remember that song, this is what the Cleveland Browns need to do. They need to go ahead and make a Cade York version. That's right. So if anybody in Cleveland is listening to me right now and you've got any contacts there in the front office or anyone in the organization, put that call in. Get that song done, okay? It's going to be awesome. Somebody make that happen. And when y'all do, just make sure y'all thank me, okay? Just thank me later, okay? So jokes aside, Cade York, he's an awesome pick for y'all. There in Cleveland, great pickup. He's going to be kicking lots of field goals as long as his leg works. Lots of field goals, lots of points. As the 4th quarter is winding down and you bring your kicker in to win the game, Cade York's going to be responsible for a lot of wins in Cleveland, I think, okay? So Cade York, awesome pickup. Moving on to the next pick. Next, I have Jerome Ford, running back from Cincinnati. He's an Alabama transfer, okay, and he was a huge part of Cincy's run to the playoffs. Jerome Ford had over 1,300 rushing yards and 19 touchdowns for Cincinnati just last season. What an incredible season. So now I'm about to dive into this little rabbit hole, okay? So hear me out, okay? The NFL is a business, okay? And Ford comes in, and he can possibly back up Nick Chubb. That's huge for the Browns. Most fifth-round picks make under $700,000, and that's where the Cleveland Browns picked up Jerome Ford, okay? So their current backup is Kareem Hunt, and he's currently the backup, and he's currently making $6 million a year, okay? Kareem Hunt is still potentially a starter somewhere else in the NFL, and so if Jerome Ford works out, you can trade Kareem Hunt and free up some cap space, okay? So, man, that's a lot, I know. Take a minute to digest that. Jerome Ford, he could come in and be a huge part of the Cleveland Browns organization, and he can also help them free up some cap space here in the future, okay? So if he works out, if we watch this and he works out and they get to move Kareem Hunt, that's big for the organization as they can add other pieces to the puzzle with some of that money that they free up, okay? So let's move on, okay? Let's see what's happening next in the AFC North. Next, I have your Super Bowl runner-ups, your Cincinnati Bengals. And the first pick that they had in the NFL draft was Daxton Hill, safety from Michigan. Personally, I like Lewis Cine a little better, but Daxton is going to be a great safety. I didn't think the Bengals needed a safety, but after looking at it a little bit more, there's definitely a considerable dip in Jesse Bates' production. He's one of their current safeties, and if you look at things, you research it, and there's definitely a dip and a drop in tackles and production for Jesse Bates in that Bengals defense. Okay, so it makes sense that they drafted Daxton Hill now. Okay, so I had the Bengals going defensive line and DB with their first couple of picks. Taking a safety with Daxton Hill, potentially helping out with Jesse Bates and stuff. It was a great move for the Bengals now that you look at it. The next pick after Daxton Hill in the second round, they did go DB with Cam Taylor-Britt from Nebraska. Cam Taylor-Britt, he's a big corner. He's 6 foot, 205 pounds. You can play him at safety if you want. He had 51 tackles and a pick last season. The next pick that I want to highlight for the Cincinnati Bengals is Zachary Carter, defensive lineman from Florida. Okay, they picked him up in the third round. I think with the Bengals, what's going to happen here is it's figuring out what role you want Zachary Carter to play for your team. He's a little lean for defensive tackle right now, and he's a little big for an edge rusher at 285 pounds. With all that said, he was very productive at Florida with 31 tackles and 7.5 sacks. So I know that's what the Cincinnati Bengals saw. I think Zachary Carter, I think you kind of figure out which direction you want to go with him, and then you either have him pick up a little bit more weight, play that defensive tackle role for you, or you have him lean down and slim up a little bit, get a little skinny for you, and play edge rusher for you, okay? So I think it was a good pickup for the Bengals. Let's move on to the next team. Next team, Steel Town. If you're listening, your Pittsburgh Steelers. Had the Steelers going QB in first round, and they did. They went with the hometown kid. I didn't think he was going to be available, but he was. And they went with the hometown kid, Kenny Pickett. Kenny had big numbers at Pitt, and he should be able to come in and compete, and he should either push out Mason Rudolph or Mitch Trubisky. He should push them all out right out of town. Now that Ben Roethlisberger is gone, the Steelers sound the alarms. They really need a QB. They went out and signed Mitch Trubisky. Definitely wasn't the home run signing of the offseason by any means. And so the QB competition is wide open down there. Okay, Kenny Pickett could come in. I don't know if he's the starter this year, but he has a lot of love for his hometown, and he was very productive there at the University of Pitt. And so I think he can come in and potentially earn that starting role, and he could be that guy for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think this was a good pick for them, okay? Moving on to the next pick for them, and I like this pick a lot. Wide receiver George Pickens from Georgia. The Steelers picked him up in round 2. I think this guy has through-the-roof potential. I watched him again up close and personal just tear apart my Baylor Bears secondary, okay? George Pickens, I like the potential he has. He's a big wide receiver, outstanding hands. The only thing about him is that he's coming off an ACL tear, okay? So he's a little bit of a high risk, but I tell you what, watching him play in college, I'm going to go ahead and say this. I think he could be the best wide receiver to come out of this class, okay? So it's potentially worth the gamble for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think they made a good pick. Let's see how that pans out for them. Moving on in round 3, the Pittsburgh Steelers took Texas A&M defensive lineman DeMarvin Leal. I think this was a great pickup. I got to watch DeMarvin Leal quite a bit. He's a versatile defensive front defender. He possesses the talent, athletic ability to move all around up in front that defensive line and produce on the NFL level, okay? So I think they got a great pickup with DeMarvin Leal. I think he fits the Pittsburgh Steelers mindset of defense first, mean, ugly defense out there, and I think he's going to fit right in, and I think it was a great pickup for them. So let's move on to the next team, last but not least, the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens, I had them going linebacker and center with their first couple of picks. They went safety with Kyle Hamilton from Notre Dame. Kyle Hamilton was rated the best safety in the class, and the Ravens seemed like they just couldn't pass that up, okay? And I don't think that I can really blame them for that. Kyle Hamilton's sitting there. Yeah, they're going to find a place for this big safety on the football field. So, good pickup for the Baltimore Ravens. Next, the Ravens traded up, and it was a great trade. They needed a center, and they also took the best one in the draft class by moving up. They took Tyler Linderbaum from Iowa. Again, I think this was a great trade for the Baltimore Ravens. Good move, Baltimore. Tyler Linderbaum's probably going to be your center for the future, foundation of your O-line. Good move. Moving on to the next one, I like their third-round pick, Travis Jones from UConn, defensive tackle. The kid was in a league of his own out there at UConn, and man, I do think he's ready for the NFL. Some of the experts have said if he played for a Power 5 team, if he played for a different team, he would have been a first-round pick. If you watch his film, he really was a man amongst boys when he played there at UConn. So great pickup for the Pittsburgh Steelers there. Next, man, this was crazy. We talked about it at the beginning of the show. And guys, we got to talk about it again. The Baltimore Ravens traded Hollywood Brown, and what scares me about this is I don't think they've done anything significant to replace him. So guess what? Sound those alarms in Baltimore. Y'all need to find a receiver, guys. I don't know what you're going to do to move the ball and score points. Lamar Jackson, and Mark Andrews, that's cool. But, man, where's the receiver to stretch the field? So that's scary. Let's see what Baltimore does next. Okay, so that does it for the AFC North. So we've wrapped up the AFC West and the AFC North. With the AFC North and their draft picks, do I feel like that changes what my way too early predictions were before? Yes, I do. Okay, so hear me out. What do we have now? Okay, here we go. Number 1, got your Cincinnati Bengals. Number 2, got your Cleveland Browns. Number 3, boom, here's your move. Your Pittsburgh Steelers move up. Number 4, your Baltimore Ravens fall into last place of the division, okay? Guys, I hope y'all heard the concern in my voice. I'm worried about Baltimore. It could be bad. They hadn't been bad in a while. And man, I just don't see how they're going to do it, right? So, I'm really concerned about the Baltimore Ravens, okay? I've got them on life support right now. It's kind of scary. Let's see what they do. They really need to go find a receiver. All right, so that's what I have for the NFL. Let's move on. Let's keep this show on the road. Let's keep these wheels turning, baby. Okay, let's keep them going. Let's talk about the NBA playoffs. Right now, we're in the second round of the NBA playoffs. As of now, again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, it's Cinco de Mayo as we're recording right now, so that's May 5th, and this is the current outlook of the NBA playoffs right now. Right now, the Mavs are down 2 on the Suns. Luka is trying to do it all by himself right now. He needs some more help from Brunson, and that hasn't quite arrived yet. I'm really scared of a sweep here. So moving on to the next team, got the Grizzlies and Warriors. They're tied up at 1-1. I like this matchup. I really do. This one's a fun one. Not sure how it's going to shake up. But I'm going to enjoy watching it. Let's see what happens. It's really hard for me to make a prediction on this one. I'm really just going to sit back and enjoy it. Let's see what happens. Okay. Next, the Heat are up 2-0 on the 76ers. Man, the Heat are really beating up on the 76ers right now. The Heat won the first game by 14, and they won the second game by 16. Okay. So, yeah, get the brooms out. This one's looking like a sweep again. Okay. Got another sweep here in the second round of the playoffs. Next, you got the Celtics and Bucks. They are tied up at 1-1. Right now, Marcus Smart is hurt with his thigh. He's said to come back in Game 3, and he's needed to finish up this series, okay? That could drastically change the series. So right now it's 1-1. If he does come back in Game 3 and can really play and really put on a good performance and, show out, it could make the series interesting. Okay, so that's it for the NBA playoffs. Let's see how the second round finishes up. And again, it's going to get more exciting next week, as this continues to shape up and we get closer to the NBA finals. Okay, let's move on. Let's move it on. Next, we have the college football recruiting portion. Not much here. As I keep saying, it's early, and it still is early in the recruiting process. But a few things happened, so let's talk about it. Let's talk about the top 10 recruiting rankings as they sit as of today, Cinco de Mayo, May 5th. Coming in at number 1, you have Notre Dame. Number 2, Texas Tech. Number 3, your reigning national champs right now, Georgia. Number 4, Ohio State. Number 5, Penn State. Number 6, Arkansas. Number 7, Tennessee. Number 8, Louisville. Number 9, your Baylor Bears. And number 10, USC. Couple notes, couple highlights that has happened over the last week or so. Notre Dame picked up a 4-star defensive lineman, Boubacar Traore from Massachusetts on 427. Texas Tech landed a 4-star running back from Canutillo, Texas, LJ Martin. That's the 5th 4-star recruit for Texas Tech this cycle, and regardless of where they end up in the mix of this is good for them. It's clear the hype for Notre Dame head coach Marcus Freeman and Texas Tech head coach Joey McGuire is very real amongst recruits, okay? So right now they are very hot. This is definitely going to change a lot, but a 5th 4-star recruit headed to Lubbock, Texas to play football, man, definitely got to pay attention to that, especially as a Baylor fan or any type of Big 12 fan, okay? Next point I want to try to make is Lincoln Riley. He's coming in the 10th spot here with USC right now. Lincoln Riley also has 3 5-star commits right now at USC. Recruits are buzzing for the change out west with him. There's a fight for last year's Biletnikoff winner, Jordan Addison, wide receiver from Pitt. Lincoln Riley is right in the middle of that fight to land him. Other teams in the race for Addison are Texas, Nebraska, Alabama, and he could potentially stay at Pitt. Texas has his old wide receiver coach, so that's something to keep an eye on. He was training with Bama's Bryce Young recently, and Bama hasn't shied away from accepting wide receiver transfers recently. Would you take the Biletnikoff winner? Absolutely. And, of course, USC. Lincoln Riley's offense is well known, and it's exciting to recruits. Lincoln is bringing 5-star quarterback Caleb Williams with him to USC, and he's been very clear about finding him new receivers to throw to. Okay, Addison helps any team that he lands with, even if he chooses Alabama. Okay, so that's a little drama. That's a little shakeup for college football recruiting, and of course, the transfer portal that's really heated up in the past couple years. Let's see where Jordan Addison ends up. Even in a break of this recording right now, they have said that Texas is most likely out of it. Okay, so let's see where this kid ends up. USC, Bama. Does he stay put at Pitt? I do think he transfers. I think it's possibly USC or Bama. Let's see where he ends up. Okay. I tell you what, that is it. That is all I have for y'all. I appreciate y'all so very much for listening to me ramble about sports. I thank y'all so much for tuning in. Okay, let me remind y'all if be sure to comment, be sure to reach out. If you want to argue, let's argue. Okay, just remember one thing. Okay, I'm right and you're wrong. Okay, I'm just kidding. I do want to have good, fun conversations with anybody out there about sports. If you love sports and you want to talk about it, that's what this show is all about. Okay, let's talk about it. Get with me on social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Okay, at the squiggly at Talk Sports Mesa. Okay, get with me, follow me, like my pages. Be sure to reach out. Would love to talk sports with you at any time, okay? So thank you for tuning in. Before you exit out of YouTube, be sure to subscribe to my page, okay? Thank you so much. I look forward to catching up with you next week. I'm going to do another NFL division, really highlight their rosters, the free agency moves, and then now the NFL draft picks, and then we'll see how the NBA playoffs are looking, if there was any exciting news in college football recruiting. Maybe Addison ends up somewhere as soon as next week, okay? So let's find out. Be sure to tune in next week. Appreciate y'all. That's it. Take care. God bless. And we're out.
Never ever listen to a lame-o. Keep a bad bitch in the bankroll. Chillin' in the hood where you can't go. I go hard in the paint, baby, yeah though. All I got to do is stay fresh. Sneakers on my feet, they ain't out yet. Diamond on my shirt, diamonds on my neck. Diamond on my shirt, diamonds on my neck.